Prince Harry and Meghan have finished their 4-day visit to Colombia yesterday. And the forum focused on highlighting and uplifting Afro-Colombian women. And Meghan, as we saw a moment ago, rather impressively addressed the crowd in Spanish. It's lovely stuff. Well, the tour is now over, so I suppose the question is, what is next for Harry? Because ahead of his 40th birthday next month, Sunday Times royal editor Roya Nikkhah has been speaking to his friends and former royal aides as she sort of digs around, and she joins me now. A very good morning to you. It's a brilliant piece that I read. Just tell us a bit about, I think many of us were a little bit over here, a little bit confused about what this 4-day tour to Colombia was meant to achieve. What has it achieved?
Good question. Well, they were invited to Colombia by Ranvir Marquez, the vice president, who said that she'd come across them after watching their Netflix documentary, which was interesting in itself. I think this trip was more of a sort of brand-building trip for Brand Sussex. When I last interviewed Harry in 2016, he talked to me about his fears of becoming irrelevant. And he said to me, and I think this is a sort of clue to the trip, there's nothing worse than going through a period in your life when you're making a massive difference and then suddenly, for whatever reason it is, whether it's media or the public perception of you, you drop off. You want to make a difference, but no one's listening to you. And I think this trip was about making sure people are still listening to the Sussexes and what they want to achieve. And
indeed, they were listening. You know, the Colombian people, they were very warmly welcomed, weren't they? And from sources that you have spoken to, do we actually think that Harry is enjoying his life in the US?
Look, I think Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal life in 2020, and he made it very clear that, you know, royal life wasn't for them. He wanted to break free from the confines and pressures of royal life. So in terms of the transition to the States and the freedom he's got, financial freedom, freedom to make his own decisions, yes, loves his family life too, really important. But I think, speaking to some of his very close friends, he does still miss elements of his life here. And I think he has found, searching for a purpose, that quest is ongoing. I'm not quite sure he's completely found his feet and his niche in America yet.
And actually, you know, when any of us hit sort of your 40s, it is a bit of a fork in the road for a lot of people, because you've been doing whatever you've been doing since your 20s, and you head down, cracking on. You do hit your 40s and you start to think, well, what am I going to do for the next 20 years? Like, what is this what I really want? But for Harry, it's a more of an existential question, isn't it? There's just so much has happened.
Yes, I think it is. And, you know, you're right. In his 20s and 30s, and early 30s, he had that sort of sense of purpose and drive that he got from the army. And he was very good at his job. And, you know, he did 2 tours of Afghanistan, and he became known as someone who, you know, drove forwards and still is. You know, veterans' causes. He's got the Invictus Games. That's key for him. But I think, you know, friends I've spoken to say he is thinking very much about what's my 10-year plan. But he realises, like before, he used to have, you know, he was always worried about becoming irrelevant. He thought he had a very sort of short runway to make decisions. And now I think he thinks he's got a bit more time to do that,
to take stock. That's interesting. And, of course, there are all these big deals. I mean, you talked about the ability to make their own money. Well, they've made an awful lot of it. But is that sustainable? They have a very expensive lifestyle, don't they? And as he talks about a lot, he has to provide his own security quite a lot of the time. So, you know, what has happened to these Netflix deals, the podcasts and all of that?
The deals is really interesting in terms of their future. Spotify last year prematurely pulled their deal with the Sussexes because they decided not to renew Meghan's Archetypes podcast. Their 5-year deal with Netflix, which is rumoured to be a multi-million-pound deal, is up for renewal next year. So they've done the Harry and Meghan TED documentary, very successful. He's done his Heart of Invictus documentary. He's currently exec producing a documentary about polo. Meghan is said to have finished her documentary on the joys of gardening and cooking and friendship. But I think there are question marks over whether or not Netflix will renew that deal next year.
Yes, and I suppose for their brand it's probably quite important that they do get that renewed, because then you wonder, well, how will they earn the millions that they need for their lifestyle?
It's a good question. Well, Meghan's got her American Riviera Orchard lifestyle brand. We've seen lots of jam jars on social media, nothing for sale yet.
Yeah, have you bought anything? Is there anything to buy?
I haven't pre-ordered anything yet. Okay. You can't pre-order anything yet, I don't think. No.
Right. Well, jam is very sweet, but the relationship with William's still sour. That's in the piece that you wrote this week in the Times. It was very clear from what you've heard that this isn't just something that they're looking to get over eventually. You referenced the fact that looking forward, William has, it appears, no need, in a way, in his life to repair this? That's the feeling I got.
Well, no desire at the moment. It's really sad. Look, you know, my understanding is they haven't spoken for 2 years, nearly 2 years since the late Queen's funeral. And my understanding is, as things stand now, were we to have change of reign, William wouldn't want Harry at his coronation.
I find that astonishing.
Yes, but actually when you think about the fact they haven't spoken for 2 years and how frozen and frosty that relationship is, it is astonishing, it's really sad, but it's not that surprising given the status quo of those brothers at the moment.
Gosh. But the relationship with the king appears to be something slightly different.
Yeah.
Of course, he's got a father's love, which is different to sibling rivalry, isn't
Yeah.
it, or sibling hurt. What is the sense from the king? Because I was reading a little while ago that he really desperately wants to see his granddaughter. He doesn't want his granddaughter Lilibet to think he was a cold grandfather. That isn't the narrative he wants for her. The Invictus Games are possibly a route through, you're saying?
Well, the Invictus Games come back to Birmingham in a couple of years, 2027. Look, the king will always keep the door ajar for Harry, but the one thing I did pick up while we're working on this piece is how frustrated he is about Harry's ongoing legal battle with the Home Office. He worries that Harry wants to lobby him on that issue.
Over security.
Over security, which he has had withdrawn. And he finds it very frustrating and tricky that Harry is still battling His Majesty's courts and His Majesty's governments over this issue.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? OK, thank you so much. I mean, it's very sad, actually, to see, and I think in many ways it's very remote from normal life, but in some ways, family feuds are something that I think probably loads of people watching will go, yeah, I get it.
They just don't have to live it out in the public like the
royal
family.
Yeah, exactly. All right, thank you so much.